the child lost in the snow. The wind screamed like a wild beast. Snow fell from the sky in thick, heavy sheets. The frozen world around was white, silent, and deadly. Nothing moved, except a small figure stumbling through the storm. It was a child. An alien child. His skin was pale blue, almost the same color as the snow. His arms were wrapped around his tiny chest, shivering badly. His feet dragged in the snow, and every step looked harder than the last. He wore no shoes. His clothes were torn, and frost clung to his face like sharp needles. He cried, but the wind stole his voice. "Mama," he whispered. No one heard. Him! The boy was lost. Somewhere far away, a light blinked through the storm, a small shelter built long ago by humans during a mining operation. Inside, a man sat alone, warming his hands near a weak electric heater. His name was Jake Carter, a human supply pilot who had crash-landed 2 days ago. His radio was dead. His food was low, and the cold was getting worse. Suddenly, Jake frowned. He thought he heard something, a faint sound like a cry. He stood up and pressed his ear to the steel door. There it was again. A child's cry. Jake grabbed his coat and goggles. "If I don't check, I won't sleep tonight," he said to himself. He pulled open the door and cold air slapped his face hard. He stepped out into the storm. The child had fallen. His legs refused to move. He lay in the snow, shaking all over. He didn't cry anymore. He didn't have the strength. His small hand reached out and fell limp. Darkness was closing in. Jake moved carefully, using a flashlight to scan the snow. "Where are you?" he shouted, hoping someone, anyone, would hear. Then something caught his eye, a small blue shape in the snow. He rushed over and fell to his knees. His heart jumped. Oh God! A child. He wasn't human. His skin was too smooth, too thin. But that didn't matter. He was just a child. Jake touched his face. Ice cold. Barely breathing. "No time to think," Jake muttered, and pulled off his heavy coat. He wrapped the child inside and lifted him. He was so light, like feathers. Jake turned and started back toward the shelter, stumbling through the storm. Snow hit his face like sandpaper, but he didn't stop. Inside the shelter, Jake placed the boy near the heater and wrapped him in 2 blankets. He checked for wounds. There were no injuries, just deep cold. "Come on, little guy, stay with me," Jake said. He rubbed the child's hands, then his feet. Over and over. The child didn't move, but after 10 minutes his chest rose. Just a little. Jake sighed with relief. Hours passed. Jake didn't sleep. He kept the child warm, gave him tiny sips of warm water, and held him close. Near morning, the child's eyes opened. Big, glowing eyes, full of fear. "It's okay," Jake said gently. "You're safe." The child didn't speak. He just stared at the strange man with strange skin and strange eyes. Then he slowly looked around. "Where's your family?" Jake asked. No answer. "Do you have a name?" Still nothing. The boy's lip trembled. Then one word came out. "Mama." Jake felt a sharp pain in his chest. Outside, the storm raged on. Somewhere a mother was searching. Or maybe she was gone. Jake looked down at the child, who now clutched the blanket tightly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a protein bar. "It's not much, but it's something," he said, offering it. The boy looked at it, unsure. Jake took a small bite and smiled. "See? It's food." Slowly, the boy reached out and took a bite. For a moment, there was only silence between them. Then the child did something unexpected. He leaned against Jake. Just a little, but enough. Jake put his hand gently on the child's back. "You'll be okay," he whispered. "I promise." But deep inside, Jake knew the storm wasn't over. Not outside, and not in whatever story this child had come from. And something told him this was just the beginning. The small alien child sat on a thick blanket close to the heater. His eyes stayed wide, unsure. He didn't speak, didn't move much. Only his hands shook now, not from cold, but fear. Jake watched from the corner, sitting on a crate. He sipped warm tea and kept his voice low. "It's all right, little guy. You're safe here." The child didn't answer. He only looked around. The shelter, old metal walls, flickering lights, broken panels. Strange to him, human things. The storm outside howled like a monster. The shelter creaked. Snow slammed the windows. It was a storm built to kill. Jake stood up and walked to a storage box. "Let's see what we've got." He pulled out a small gray suit, maybe too big, but warmer than rags. He walked over and gently offered it. The child flinched and pulled back. "Easy, easy." Jake knelt down. "Just clothes. Warmer than what you're wearing." He placed the suit next to him and backed away. The child looked at it, then at Jake, then at the door. He didn't trust the man. He didn't know this place. But something inside told him he wasn't going to be hurt. He picked up the suit. Jake smiled softly. "Good choice, kid." Sometime later, the boy was dressed. Still quiet, but his shivering had stopped. Jake made soup, just hot water and powdered mix, but it smelled good. He set a bowl in front of the child. "Eat," he said, then took a seat nearby with his own bowl. The child took a sip. His eyes lit up. Warm. Salty. Real food. For a few minutes there was peace between them. Then Jake leaned forward. "Can you tell me your name?" The child looked down. Jake pointed at himself. "Jake. I'm Jake." The child stared. Jake tapped his chest. "Jake." The boy blinked, then tapped his own chest. "Rill." Jake smiled. "Rill, nice to meet you, buddy." Far away, beyond the snow and wind, something moved. A figure. The child's mother. She was crawling now, her knees bloody, skin torn by wind and ice. Her eyes were nearly frozen shut. Her fingers gripped a sharp piece of metal like a blade. She didn't know where she was going anymore. She only followed her heart. Find Rill. She remembered his cry. The moment he slipped away from her hand, the storm had pulled them apart. Now she moved with only one goal: find her child, or die trying. Inside the shelter, Jake checked his radio again. No signal. Still dead. He muttered. Useless pile of junk. Rill sat nearby, holding a warm cup with both hands. He looked stronger now, but every loud sound outside made him jump. Jake noticed. "You expecting something out there?" he asked. Rill didn't answer. Jake stood and peeked out the window. Nothing but snow. He didn't see the tracks nearby, the ones from Rill, and the ones from something else. Later, Jake set up a small bed for the boy using blankets and padding. "You can sleep here," he said. "I'll keep the fire going." Rill looked at him again with those glowing eyes. Not scared now, just confused, as if asking, "Why are you helping me?" Jake didn't need to hear the question. He answered anyway. "Because you're just a kid, and kids shouldn't die in snow." Night came. Wind still screamed. Jake sat by the heater with a knife in his hand, not to scare Rill, but in case something worse than cold came knocking. He almost dozed off, when a low growl echoed outside. Froze, then heard it again, not the wind. Something was out there. He jumped to his feet and grabbed his flashlight. He moved toward the door quietly. Rill sat up, alert. Jake turned to him. "Stay, quiet." He opened the metal door slowly and cold air burst in. The flashlight cut through the snow. At first, nothing. Then movement. Eyes reflected the light. 4 legs, fur, claws, a predator. It stood low to the ground, sniffing, watching, not afraid. Jake raised his knife. "Back off," he warned. The creature snarled. Another shadow moved behind it. Jake realized there wasn't just one. Inside, Real panicked. He crawled to the corner, holding the blanket tight. Outside, Jake backed away slowly. No sudden moves, he whispered. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed. Across the snowy plain, the creature turned its head. Another figure appeared on the ridge. Not human, not beast. It was the alien mother. Her body shook with pain. Blood ran down her arm, but her eyes burned with fire. She let out a cry, half scream, half roar. The predators turned and ran. Jake stood frozen. She fell to her knees. Back. Inside, Real crawled to the door and peeked out. His eyes widened. He gasped. He knew that sound. He knew that figure. Jake turned and saw the child running past him, into the storm. Real, wait! But it was too late. The boy threw himself into the snows and into the arms of the dying woman. She held him tight. Her lips moved. Jake ran to them and saw her collapse, still holding her son. He looked down at the woman, at the boy, at their frozen tears. And he knew this night was not over. It had just begun. Snowflakes danced through the air like falling stars. The storm had calmed a little, but danger still walked the frozen ground. Jake knelt beside the alien mother and child. The boy, Real, was crying softly into his mother's chest. Her arms were around him, but her eyes were closed. Her face was pale, her lips dry and blue. Hey, Jake said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. Stay with me. Don't sleep now. The mother opened her eyes just a crack. Her voice came out in a whisper. Don't hurt him. Jake shook his head. I'm not here to hurt him. I saved him. She blinked, trying to believe him. Jake pulled off his coat and wrapped it around her. Can you walk? She didn't answer. Okay, he muttered. I'll carry you. He lifted her up slowly, carefully. She was cold to the touch, her limbs stiff, her breaths shallow. Real ran beside him, holding onto the coat, not letting go. Together they moved back toward the shelter, wind at their backs. But behind them, something watched. Later, inside the shelter, Jake laid the alien woman on the bedding. He wrapped her in blankets and placed the heater closer. Her breathing was faint, but steady. Real sat close, holding her hand tightly. Jake boiled water and mixed herbs from his med kit. He gave the warm drink to Real and whispered, "Make her drink this." The boy nodded. Carefully, he helped his mother sip the liquid. Her fingers twitched. She'll need time, Jake said. Rest, warmth, and food. Real looked at him again, not with fear this time, but with hope. That night, Jake sat with his knife again. He kept his ears open. The predators from before had vanished, but he knew they might return. The shelter wasn't made for defense. If those things came back in numbers, the doors wouldn't stop them. Suddenly, Real tugged at his sleeve. Jake looked down. The boy pointed toward the door. Jake turned his head slowly. Scratching. Something was outside. He stood up quietly, putting a finger to his lips. Stay here, he whispered. He moved to the door, stepped near the window, and peeked out. Yellow eyes stared back at him. Jake stepped back. A loud thud hit the door, then another. They were testing the walls. He looked around the shelter. No weapons, no traps, just a heater and a butter knife. He needed a plan. In the corner, the mother stirred. Jake rushed to her side. Easy, don't move too much. She looked around, panicked. Where are we? Jake answered slowly, pointing to himself. Jake, human, you, safe. She blinked. You saved us. Jake nodded. A soft noise came from the wall. Another scratch, then a growl. The woman's eyes widened. They followed us. Jake stood. I know. Can you fight? She laughed weakly. I can barely sit. Jake grinned. Then I guess it's my turn. He grabbed metal pieces from the broken panels, tied a few into sharp ends using wire. Then he found a small tank of old fuel in storage. Not much, he whispered, but maybe just enough. Rill watched him, eyes full of questions. Jake looked at him. We're gonna make some noise, kid. The first creature slammed into the door. The second clawed at the sidewall. Their growls filled the air. Jake opened the roof hatch quietly and climbed up. Cold slapped his face again, but he didn't. Stop. He poured a trail of fuel from the roof edge to a line in the snow. He struck the igniter. Foom! A wave of fire lit up the ice. The beasts jumped back, howling. Jake shouted down the hatch, "Now!" Ryle hit the heater switch. Warm air rushed to the vents, blowing smoke and heat outside. The smell confused the creatures. The light, the fire. They didn't understand. One of them charged anyway. Jake grabbed his makeshift spear. Come on then. The creature jumped. Jake rolled and stabbed. It let out a sharp cry and fell into the fire. The others ran. The flames cracked and hissed in the snow. Jake breathed hard, holding his side. His arms ached. His hands bled. But they were alive. Back inside, the mother stared at him. Why could do this for us? Jake sat down and wiped his face. Because no one else would. She looked at him for a long time, then nodded slowly. I am Talina, she said. And this is my son. I know, Jake replied. He told me. Rill. She smiled faintly. The fire outside died down. Inside the shelter, warmth remained, but deep in the snowfields, more eyes were watching, and Jake knew they would have to leave soon. But for tonight, they had won. Morning came slowly. The storm had faded, but the sky stayed gray. The frozen wind still blew across the icy land, soft but bitter. Inside the shelter, the quiet was heavy. Talina, Rill's mother, lay still under layers of blankets. Her breathing was stronger now, though her face remained pale. Her fingers moved slightly, holding Ryle's small hand. Jake stood near the broken window, watching the snowy plains. He had not slept. His body was sore. His cuts stung. But he was alive. They were all alive. Fuel is low, he said quietly to himself. Food is almost gone, and predators know we're here. He turned back to look at the alien mother and child. We can't stay. A few hours later, Talina tried to sit up. Her body ached, but she pushed through the pain. She had spent her life running, first from war, then from slavery. When she had escaped with Rill, she thought they would find peace. Instead, they found snow, hunger, fear, and now, this strange human. She looked at him with confusion. He was nothing like what she had heard. Humans were supposed to be selfish, cold, dangerous. But this one had saved her son, had carried her, had built a fire to protect them. Jake, she said softly. He turned. You're awake. She nodded. Thank you. You didn't have to help us. Jake gave a tired smile. Yeah, but I did. Rill sat beside his mother, silent but happy. His small hand never let go of hers. Jake placed a steaming mug in front of her. It's weak soup, but hot. She took it slowly, sipping as her body tried to recover. After a long pause, she said, You could have left him. In the snow. No one would blame you. Jake shrugged. He cried. I followed. And now you're stuck with us, she said. He laughed quietly. Could be worse. She looked down. We should go soon. If they find us again, Jake interrupted. We'll move out tomorrow. I have a map. There's an old supply station about a day's walk from here. If it's still standing, we can call for help. Talina raised an eyebrow. You'd come with us? Jake's face turned serious. I'm not leaving you behind. For a moment, she said nothing. Then quietly, no one's ever said that to me before. That night, the three of them sat around the heater. Jake had turned a piece of scrap, metal, into a small lamp. The dim light glowed over their faces. Talina asked, Why were you here? Jake leaned back. Supply drop. Engine failed. Crash landed. My team's probably already reported me missing. Rill yawned and leaned against his mother. She stroked his head gently. Do you have a family? She asked. Jake was quiet for a moment. Used to. Lost them years ago. I'm sorry. He shook his head. Don't be. I'm just glad I found yours in time. Talina stared at him. There was something about his eyes. Pain. But also peace. You saved him, she said. You saved me. I just did what anyone decent would do. No, she said firmly. Not anyone, only you. Later that night, while the others slept, Jake prepared a bag. He packed the last of the food, the map, a flare gun, and water. Then, he sat by the door, knife in hand, and waited. But this time the beast did not return. Just silence. The next morning the wind was calm. The sun broke through the clouds, painting the snow in gold. It was time to leave. Jake helped Talina stand. She was weak, but able to walk with support. Rill walked between them, holding both their hands. They stepped out into the snow. The world was quiet. Each step was hard. The cold bit through their clothes. But they walked. Together. Hours passed. Then Jake saw it. A tower, metal, broken but standing. The station, he said. We made it. They climbed inside. It smelled like rust and dust, but the radio blinked faintly. Jake worked quickly. Come on. The light turned green. A voice crackled through. Unregistered signal. Identify yourself. Jake grabbed the mic. This is Jake Carter, human pilot. We need help. We have 2 survivors. Alien mother and child. Cold exposure, minimal food, coordinates uploading now. Silence. Then. Signal received. Rescue ship en route. ETA. 6 hours. Jake slumped back. We did it. Talina sat beside him, breathing hard. You really stayed, she whispered. I said I would. She reached out and held his hand. He didn't pull away. Outside, the sky turned orange. Inside, hope finally warmed the room. And Talina knew. The final step was not walking through snow. It was trusting again. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long golden shadows over the snow. Inside the old supply station, the small heater hummed gently, and warmth slowly spread through the metal walls. Talina sat on a dusty bench, wrapped in a thick gray blanket. Her eyes stayed on the man across from her, Jake. He was checking his wounds, wiping dried blood from his arm with a wet cloth. Rill was curled up nearby, finally asleep. You should rest too, Talina said quietly. Jake looked up and smiled, tiredly. I will, once you're both safe. There was a pause between them, then she asked, Why? Why go this far for someone like me? Jake blinked. Someone like you? Talina looked down. I've seen how your kind looks at mine. I've been called less. I've been pushed, kicked, used, left behind. Jake stayed silent. No one ever gave me food, she whispered. No one ever helped without wanting something. Jake set the cloth down. I don't want anything. Talina raised her eyes slowly. Then, why? He shrugged. Maybe I'm tired of watching people suffer. Maybe I saw a child freezing in the snow and couldn't just walk away. She watched him closely. You're strange, human, he laughed. You're not the first to say that. The old station creaked as wind pushed against it gently. But inside, it was calm. Safe. Jake moved over to the station's control panel and checked the signal light. It still blinked, steady, and green. 5 more hours, maybe less, he said. Then the rescue ship should find us. Talina nodded slowly, her body still sore but healing. Jake stood and poured warm water into a cup. He walked over and handed it to her. Drink. Hydration matters. She reached for it, but her fingers trembled too much to grip. Jake hesitated, then knelt in front of her and gently held the cup to her lips. She stiffened. "No tricks," he said softly. Her lips parted and she drank. Warmth spread down her throat and across her chest. Not just from the drink, but from the way he held the cup. Gentle, patient, not demanding. Talina lowered her eyes again. Jake helped her lean back. "Better?" She nodded. "You touch like someone who doesn't want to break things." Sat beside her on the floor. "That's because I've been broken before. I know what it's like." She glanced at him. "By who?" He stared at the floor. "War, people, time." Then he looked up. "But I'm still here." Later, while Real still slept, Jake sat across from Talina and pulled out a small object from his bag. It was a music player. "Still works," he said, turning it on. Soft notes filled the room. Gentle, calm, peaceful. A human melody. Talina listened, her eyes closed. "What is it?" she asked. "A lullaby. Old Earth song. My mother used to play it." She smiled faintly. "It's beautiful." Jake nodded. "She said it was made to help people feel safe." Talina opened her eyes and looked at Ryle. He hasn't felt safe in a long time. Well, maybe now he can. The room fell silent again, but the silence felt warm this time. Talina looked at Jake with softer eyes. "You are not like the others." Jake tilted his head. "And you're not like I expected either." She smiled slightly. "I thought humans were all cold inside. And I thought aliens were all monsters," he said. They both laughed quietly. Then Talina leaned forward. "Jake." He turned toward her. If the ship comes and you leave, will you forget us?" Jake blinked. "Why would I?" She looked down. "Because I'm no one. I'm just a mother who failed her child." Jake's voice was firm. "Now, you didn't fail him. You survived. You kept going when your body begged to stop. You protected him until you couldn't anymore, and even then you tried. That's not failure." Talina's eyes filled with tears, but they didn't fall. Jake leaned closer. "You're one of the strongest people I've met." She breathed in slowly. "You say things I never heard before." "Maybe that's the problem," Jake replied. "Too few people say them." Outside, wind brushed softly against the walls. Inside, two survivors sat together, no longer strangers. Talina reached out, slowly, and took Jake's hand. He didn't pull. Away for a while they sat like that, no words, just warmth. The heater hummed, the boy dreamed, and the mother, who had never known kindness without pain, now felt something strange inside her chest. Hope. The rescue ship had not arrived yet. The blinking green light on the control panel still flashed with the same rhythm. Time passed slowly inside the old supply station, but the fear of the cold world outside no longer filled every breath. Talina sat near the window, watching snowflakes swirl in the wind. Rill was awake now, drawing circles in the dust with his finger. He smiled sometimes, but only when Jake was nearby. Jake was fixing a damaged heater pipe. He worked with focus, sweat on his forehead, even though the air was still chilly. Talina turned her head toward him. "You work like a machine." Jake chuckled. "I've been told worse." Rill crawled over to sit next to Jake. "You fix everything?" Jake glanced at him. "I try." Rill poked his own chest. "Can you fix her?" Jake paused. He looked at Talina, who was pretending not to listen, then back at Rill. "I'm trying to." Later, Jake handed Talina a patch kit. "I found old gloves in the storage. You can use this to repair the tears." She took the gloves carefully, rubbing the worn leather. "You're still helping us." "I said I would." She sewed the gloves in silence, her hands moving with care. Finally, she asked, "What will you do after the ship comes?" Jake thought for a moment. "I'll leave with you both. I'll make sure you get medical care, a safe place." She nodded slowly. "And then?" Jake looked out the window. I don't know. Depends on what you want. Talina stared at him. No one has ever asked me what I wanted. Well, Jake said, I'm asking now. By mid-afternoon, the wind outside grew stronger again. Not a full storm, but enough to shake the walls and whistle through the cracks. Jake checked the supplies again. Almost out of food. Talina stood, though still weak. We can last one more day. Jake turned. You don't have to be strong all the time. She smiled faintly. I do. I'm a mother. Jake looked at her for a long time. I know. He pulled out a small bag and opened it. Inside were rations, his last 2 protein bars. He handed one to her. For real? She looked at him. You won't eat? I'll be fine. She broke the bar in half. Then share it. He hesitated. Please, she said. He took the piece. They ate together in silence. That night, the 3 of them huddled near the heater. The shelter lights flickered but stayed on. Jake looked at the boy, now asleep again. He's strong. Talina nodded. He gets that from his father. Jake's eyes moved to her. Where is he now? She exhaled. Gone. Long before the war. He was kind. Like you. Jake looked down. I'm sorry. She placed a hand over his. You don't have to be. You remind me that there's still kindness left in the stars. Jake's voice was soft. And you remind me there's still something worth fighting for. Later, Jake went to check the roof hatch. As he opened it, a gust of icy wind struck him. He squinted into the white distance. Something moved. Far away. A small black dot in the snow. Then another. And another. His heart jumped. He slammed the hatch shut and climbed down fast. We've got company, he said. Talina stood. The beasts? Jake nodded. At least 3, maybe more. She picked up a metal rod. Then we fight. Jake shook his head. Not this time. He ran to the control panel and hit the distress beacon, twice in quick bursts. What are you doing? Talina asked, signaling any rescue ship nearby. Twice means emergency threat. She moved beside him. And if they don't come? Jake loaded the flare gun. Then we give them a reason to. The creatures came near the station, sniffing, circling. Rill clung to his mother's leg. Jake stood guard near the door, flare gun ready. Stay back, he muttered. The first creature roared. Jake fired the flare. A bright red streak shot into the sky and exploded with fire. The beast shrieked and scattered for a moment, but they didn't leave. They waited. They're smart, Jake whispered. They know we're tired. Then, a sound. A distant rumble. A light appeared in the sky. Then another. Talina gasped. Is that? Jake smiled. Yes. A human rescue ship descended through the clouds, glowing like a star. The wind from its engines threw snow in all directions. The beasts ran, vanished into the dark. The ship landed. Jake dropped the flare gun and sighed in relief. We made it. Inside the shelter, warmth still glowed. But now, it wasn't from heaters. It was from something else, something rare in the galaxy, compassion. The rescue ship's lights filled the dark sky like a second sun. Snow blew around its landing gear as the engines cooled down, and the side ramp hissed open with a cloud of steam. Jake stood in front of Talina and Rill, shielding them as figures, stepped out of the ship. Soldiers, medics, humans. Don't worry, Jake said softly to the alien mother. They're here to help. Talina held her son close. Her body still shook, half from fear, half from the cold. But she didn't back away. Rill peeked out from behind her, his glowing eyes wide. A tall woman in a rescue uniform stepped forward. Lieutenant Carter? Jake nodded. Yeah, I'm the one who called. Her eyes moved to the pair behind him. You weren't alone. No, Jake said. And I'm not leaving them. The woman frowned. We weren't told about alien Civilians. Well, now you are. Another soldier whispered something to the officer. She looked back at Jake. All right, we'll take them aboard, but they're your responsibility. Jake smiled. They've been my responsibility from the start. Inside the rescue ship, warmth wrapped around them like a blanket. Medics checked Talina's vitals, gave Real a heated drink, and wrapped both in clean clothes. For the first time in days, they felt safe. Jake sat on a bench nearby, watching. The medics tried to separate Talina from her son, but Real cried and held on tight. Jake stood and stepped in. Let them stay together. The medic hesitated, then nodded. Talina looked at Jake. Their eyes met. She gave him a small nod. No words were needed. Hours later, the ship soared through the clouds. Through the window, stars appeared, bright and endless. Jake stood near the glass, arms crossed. He felt like he could finally breathe again. Talina walked up slowly beside him. Her skin had more color now. Her steps were steadier. He looked at her. How do you feel? Warmer, she said with a smile. Stronger. They watched the stars together. I never imagined I'd be on a human ship, she said. Jake laughed. And I never imagined I'd be rescuing an alien mother and child in a blizzard. She tilted her head. Do you regret it? He turned toward her. Not for a second. Talina stepped closer. You gave my child food, fire, safety. I did what anyone should have done. No, she whispered. You did what no one else would. Jake looked at her hand resting beside his. Slowly, he reached out and held it. I'm glad I found you both, he said. She smiled, soft and real. So am I. Later, Real slept peacefully in a small bed near the back of the ship. For the first time, he didn't cry in his sleep. He didn't flinch. He didn't tremble. He simply rested. Talina sat beside him, brushing his hair gently. Jake brought her a warm drink and sat across from her. So, he said, what happens next for you? Talina looked at her son. I don't know. We have no home to return to. No one waiting for us. Jake nodded. I don't either. She looked at him. Then, maybe we don't need to be alone anymore. Jake blinked. You mean? I mean, she said carefully. You saved us, Jake. Not just our bodies, but our spirits. You gave me hope. My son adores you. I trust you. Jake swallowed. I don't know what kind of future I can offer. She leaned forward. A warm hand, a shared roof, a safe place to laugh. That's more than I've ever had. Jake smiled. Then maybe we build something new, together. Her eyes glistened. That's all I ever wanted. The ship approached the nearest colony. Lights glowed across the planet's surface like tiny stars below. As the crew prepared for landing, the officer approached Jake. You'll need to report your actions. Jake nodded. I will. The officer looked at Talina and Real. What will happen to them? Jake placed an arm around Talina. They'll stay with me. They're my family now. The officer raised an eyebrow. Your family? Jake stared at her. You don't need blood to call someone family. The officer didn't argue. She simply said, good luck, and walked away. The ship touched down on a quiet landing pad. As the doors opened, wind rushed in, but it wasn't cold. It was fresh. New Jake, Talina, and Real stepped out together. They had no luggage, no home, no title. But they had each other. And that was enough. A human, an alien mother, and a child, all brought together by a storm, all changed forever by a single choice. Not of war, not of power, but of compassion. The kind that burns warmer than fire. The kind they had never known until now.